As an eminent composer, organist, pedagogue and scholar, Jacobus Kloppers significantly contributed to musicological and organ teaching in South Africa and Canada, and in the latter context, art music and liturgical composition. His substantial oeuvre features numerous commissioned works that in notable instances were performed and recorded internationally, earning him wider acclaim and status as a composer. At the Odeion School of Music, University of the Free State, since his departure for Canada in 1976, there has been a lasting impression of Kloppers' contribution during the 1970s to transform this institution from a department mostly of regional relevance to one that introduced the discipline of systematic music studies to the broader South African musicological community, and one that offered its students the benefit of Kloppers' specialist knowledge on Bach's organ oeuvre and rhetorical studies. After Kloppers emigrated to Canada, at the King's College in Edmonton, Alberta, now the King's University College, while helping to build this institution from its modest beginnings as a private Christian college to its current university status, Kloppers simultaneously played a significant role in Edmonton's music culture, for which he was inaugurated to Edmonton's Cultural Hall of Fame in 2008. The essays brought together in our book as a symbolic gesture collectively constitute recognition of Kloppers' work in South Africa and Canada. Our team of contributing authors includes colleagues from the Odeion School of Music, from the top left Jan Beukes, Nicole Viljoen, Martina Viljoen, Mathilde Wiem, Elje de Plooy and Luzaan Eigelaar. Canadian colleagues who contributed are Dr. Charles Stolte, Associate Professor of Saxophone, Music Theory and Composition at the King's University College in Edmonton, where he now also heads the music division, and the husband and wife team, Drs. Joachim Zegger and Mani Giesbrecht, also known as the celebrated keyboard team Duo Majoya. Our final contributors, Isak Groewe and Dani Strauss, each share a special connection with Kobie Kloppers. Groewe, an emeritus professor at Stellenbosch University, studied with Kloppers during his Bloemfontein years, later working closely with him as a colleague. Dani Strauss, the leading expert on Herman Dooyeweer's theory of modal aspects internationally, taught a course during 1971 in the Dooyeweerian mode of thinking, which Kloppers attended, that later significantly influenced his scholarly thought and, in his teaching, the integrality of faith and learning. The chapters offered in our book depart from differing philosophical and methodological perspectives. Contributions by Kloppers' Canadian colleagues proceed from the perspective of the Reformed tradition in North America and its vision for a culturally involved Christianity. Dani Strauss' chapter engages the Dutch heritage of that tradition, arguing the relevance of Dooyeweer's thought for Kloppers' academic teaching, also examining Calvin Seerveld's influence. The musicological group of contributing authors had as our aim, apart from a biographical overview, the elimination of Kloppers' music as agency. As a collection of essays, the various contributions offer impressions of a corpus of work and a life that is one of devoted service in music. Kloppers' role in our documenting of his life and work needs to be acknowledged here. Studies based on compositional output seldom include commentary from the composer. Yet, over the entire course of our endeavor, Kloppers generously shared information relevant to our work through a method that may perhaps best be described as one of cooperative heroism. This renders our project unique. As our chapters unfolded, the influence of Kloppers' life circumstances on his artistic oeuvre progressively came to the fore. Thus it became clear that a life and work publication, though focusing selectively on aspects of work, would do greater justice to the subject than a disciple, friends and colleagues type festschrift. More encompassing documentation of Kloppers' life and intellectual and artistic output would also contribute more substantially towards local music historiography writing. Many of our guests tonight will know that Kloppers' adult life in South Africa coincided with the era of apartheid and how already during his postgraduate study in Germany, 1961 to 66, increasingly he became critical of the injustices of apartheid. As documented in our book, during his years at the University of the Orange Free State, 1966 to 1976, Kloppers publicly voiced his objection to apartheid's political ideology and practice on numerous occasions. These views resulted in him being stigmatized within Afrikaner intellectual circles and caused him to cross paths with the so-called special branch of the South African Security Police. Eventually, these developments gave rise to his decision to resign from his university position and his immigration to Canada with his family without the prospect of a professional position in that country. Kloppers came from a Christian Afrikaner background that brought him into profound conflict with his sense of social and moral justice. Ever since his undergraduate studies at the Potchefstroom University for Christian higher education, he was influenced by reformational philosophy, its theocentric view of the nation, society and politics, and its focus on social justice. Together with critical perspectives gained during his years as organist in the Deutsche Evangelisch Reformierte Kirche, Frankfurt am Main Süd, from 1962 to 1966. Increasingly, Kloppers and his wife Minsie faced an uncomfortable confrontation with the moral and ethical implications of apartheid. Yet, during one of our final conversations, he characterized himself as a true Afrikaner in the deep cultural sense of the word. As we found in our study of his works, being torn between his loyalty towards the Afrikaner nation and the moral convictions that led him to leave behind the country that was dear and near to him and his family, was expressed most notably in the profound, almost militant inner conflict of his Partita on Genevan Psalm 116, his large-scale work for piano Reflections, prologue, variations and epilogue on an Afrikaans folk song, and his dialectic fantasy for organ, the latter two works forming part of the concert program presented later tonight. In their compositional fabric, while each of these works point to geographic, cultural and religious influences and traces of personal strife, suffering and acceptance, they reveal a complexity of musical materials, structure and expression. Indeed, they represent a densely constructed musical dialectic that, within the broader context of Kloppers' work, may be seen as a compelling and indelible compositional fingerprint. Within reformational philosophy, aesthetic receptivity and the obedient aesthetic life are linked with social justice. However, though born from strong moral and ethical commitment, Kloppers' works do not embody overt social or political content. Even in Reflections, a pivotal work within his oeuvre, political commentary is subtle and operative on the deep structural symbolic level of representation rather than sensation. From the perspective of his reformed faith and philosophy, Kloppers' compositions have never been wielded as weapons of politically inspired protest, but rather, in an encompassing sense, they represent visions of eschatological hope. This correlates with Kloppers' view of his oeuvre to which religiosity is central. At this point, our guests may wonder why, within the context of divine anticipation, the construct of nostalgia is an overarching theme to our volume. On some level, nostalgia denotes Kloppers' self-professed position of cultural insidedness and outsidedness. However, apart from representing a return to a lost and difficult past, nostalgia in his oeuvre may be understood in relation to a dialectic tension between what is radically incomplete in this life and what is beyond and transcendent. From this standpoint, nostalgia in Kloppers' oeuvre does not signify any expression of romanticized sentimentality. It does not involve revisiting his Afrikaner past as a return to foregone times of imagined happiness, stability or belonging. Instead, as suggested by the work presented here tonight, it may involve a re-examining of a personal or collective history that permits deep questioning, juxtaposing what was against what is faithfully hoped for.